Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Heather Marshall. Looking forward to our conversation today, Heather, as always.
Thanks, Simon. I am as well. It's great to be here again and chat with you again.
Yeah. So Heather came on the podcast last year, and now she's got a book out, and the book does some diving into healing, and it's a fiction, right? It is a
fiction. Yeah, Amazon has it categorized as biographical fiction.
Okay.
I don't know how Amazon arrives at these categories, and I suppose that's not far off because it is about the protagonist is an adoptee and I'm an adoptee and she's around the same age as I am, and so there are some similar threads, but it is a fiction.
It is a fiction.
Yeah. And I partly say that to sort of protect my daughter, because with this book and with the previous one, the commonality is that there's a woman with a daughter, and people come up to her and say, how do you feel about being in your mum's books? And she's sort of like, I'm not in my mum's books. So it is a fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So healing, then. We're here to talk about healing.
Yep.
What does healing mean to you?
So hard to pin that down to one sort of short bite, isn't it? And I've been thinking about, I've been thinking about that, obviously, as I was thinking about coming on the podcast again. And maybe because I'm a writer and I like words, I was thinking about how sort of the moments when you feel healed, how they feel in the body, like your whole self. And the word, if we're not healthy, if something needs to be healed, right? There's the word disease, right? Dis-ease. And so for me, healing is moving in the direction of being at ease, where you feel at ease, at home in your whole self. You move through the world with a sense of ease, of rightness, of trust, of self-trust, just learning to trust yourself. Yeah, and so I think where I am on my healing journey is on the path to more moments of that sense of ease and greater distance between the times and places where I feel dis-ease, so to speak. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm just scribbling away here.
Yeah.
So it seems like the biggest thing here that you're talking about is a feeling, yeah.
Yeah, it is a feeling. I would say not a feeling as in love or joy or that. It's as in just a feeling. It's about the whole self. Like you know how when you are somewhere or you're with someone and you feel completely relaxed. There's no anxiety there. There's no worry. That you're with somebody that you trust completely. And your whole body just feels relaxed and comfortable. There's nothing jangly anywhere. So your body and your mind is relaxed, at ease. Everything is just as though things have just slotted into place for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what your experience has been in the past, but my path has included a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of it's been a long journey for me to find moments where I felt at ease, where I trusted myself, and where I just had the sense of like I'm okay, everything's okay, we're okay.
So peace would seem to be the
peace.
yeah, yeah. I'm slowing it down on purpose. You realise that?
Yeah.
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 It's the it's the absence. It's the absence of anxiety. It's the absence of worry. It's the absence of trauma. It's the absence of disease.
It is the absence of disease. And I think the trauma piece, it's when the trauma is no longer the driver. It's no longer the part that is running in the background, saying things in your head and making you feel anxious and all of that. The wound obviously is the wound, and it's always there, right? But it's my and the shame and the grief and everything that come with that. My therapist says, well, when those come up, we're going to put them in the corner with a coloring book. We don't deny their existence, but we have some tools where when they do come up, we can do the equivalent of like, all right, darling, and here's your coloring book. Off you go into the corner and you play over there. I'm going to be here doing something else.
Yeah, and it's amazing that, because my wife is not into anything like this at all, right? The yeah, the looking at who we are and separating who we are from our trauma or anything like that. She won't go anywhere. But somebody bought her a coloring book, like a mindful coloring book, and she was up for it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she
Lovely.
was up for it. Yeah, it's a distraction for her,
Yes.
and that's, if we I love the way that you what's the word, you characterize, grief and shame, and put them in there in the corner with a coloring book. It works it worked in the same way. It works
Yeah,
the same. It's distracting. It's
it
distracting.
is. Yeah.
It's distracting them. Yeah, yeah. The word that's coming to me is, or the idea that's coming to me is, this is subtractive. Yeah, it's subtractive. So it's us without.
Yes. Yes. You subtractive as in we are taking away the trauma, the results of the wound. Is that what you mean?
Well, we're taking, yeah, we are taking away. That's definitely to use the subtractive metaphor. It's subtractive. It's in a way, it's kind of reductive as well. It's like, and I mentioned this in a podcast I did this morning with an Aussie. This idea, and it's a good one. I think it's the idea of some of us are looking for enlightenment, but so that's a kind of an additive thing. Whereas
Yes.
if we look at we look at the flip of that is, we are the light, and that light has been endarkened.
Yes. I think of it as a space clearing, which I think is the same thing that you're saying in saying subtractive, where the light, the self, the whatever you want to call that, soul, if you want to use that word, has been covered over by this grief, this wound, this trauma. And what I've been trying to do, anyone have been doing, is looking at that grief and trauma and sort of digging it away, excavating it, so that I could get back in connection with who I really am, with the light, if you want to use that
Yeah.
language. I think I just shut myself down when I was very, very young. And I didn't even really feel fully.
No.
I just shut myself off from that. I think it was too much. And so I had to learn, um, I had to excavate that in order to feel, and that's not very much fun in in the beginning. We do it as a protective measure,
Yeah.
right? Because pain and anger are hard to deal with. And then we start to excavate, and there's a part, it's like it's like sort of if you've let your wardrobe, if you let your closet get really, really filled up with things and you haven't had a good clear out in 10 years or something, and you decide, right, this is it, I'm going to organize. And there's that point in the middle of it where everything is on the floor, on the bed, on the wherever it is, on the furniture. And it looks as though it's 10 times the amount that it was when it was just all shoved into the wardrobe. And you stand there in the middle of it and you think, what have I done? It wasn't really that bad in the first place, was it? But then you have no choice. It's out. You've got no choice but to sort through it and then begin to put it back in the way that you want and decide what you want to keep and what you want to discard. Does that make sense as a metaphor for you?
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. And I was thinking about where I should go next from there. I like the I like that. So how would you? So the therapy process is getting, or the healing process, which may or may not involve therapy. It may involve writing. Clearly, if you're a writer.
Yeah, it could involve just getting up in the morning, and that has been part of my therapeutic process, is getting up in the morning. We don't have to do it in the morning. It just works for me better in the morning. And just writing all the stuff out. And it's not for anybody but me. And just things make more sense to me once I've put them on a piece of paper. And I don't I draft pen and paper, not on the computer, because it doesn't work in my brain the same way. But that's just me.
Yeah. Can I just want to jump in there? Yeah, just want to jump in there. It maybe because to allow the audience, right, to kind of signpost the audience, maybe try them both and see what works for you. I've heard that, especially when we're talking about emotive stuff, pen and paper is the best way.
Yeah, there is some brain science that actually supports that. In terms of what's happening in the brain and the lateral movement of the literal left-right movement for most of us. If you're writing left-right, I know some languages go the opposite way. The direction is irrelevant. That is a different physical movement, obviously, than on the keyboard, which doesn't involve any movement, and there are different things happening between the hemispheres. I used to have an article. Now I don't have it. I used to be a high school teacher, and I had obnoxious teacher things posted on one of my bulletin boards that were, I say they're obnoxious because I know a lot of the kids thought they were obnoxious because they were me using brain science to show them that I wasn't just an old grump about technology, that there was actual science to support what I was trying to get them to do in terms of like taking notes by hand instead of on the computer and all of that business. So there's some brain science that supports the idea that pen, paper, left, right movement does things in the hemispheres that helps us dig in. And people should do whatever resonates with them. They should experiment with times of day. I write in the morning first thing because the rational part of my brain wakes up much more slowly. The editor part of my brain, the critical part of my brain, she needs coffee or something before she wakes up, right? And the more creative, feely part of my brain is there as soon as I wake up.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it first thing in the morning, so I can get a running start on whatever I'm doing before the little naggy brain wakes up and starts trying to derail me. I know other people who find that when I'm asleep, at 11 o'clock midnight, that's when their thing is. So I think for people who are listening, it's all just an experiment. Try it. If it works, continue. If it doesn't, try something else.
So I think your metaphor of the wardrobe is great because it fits with the writing process. So you you talked about how the far when you've got out all the clothes out of the wardrobe and put them on the bed, it looks far messier than it did when it was in the wardrobe, and there's more of them. It looks bigger, and I guess that's the people talk about unpacking, don't they? We talk about unpacking. So like unpacking a suitcase, unpacking a wardrobe, it's the same thing, and so it works great for that. So I've got a fascination with metaphors.
Great. I like metaphors too.
So why do you think, because we talk about coming out of the fog, we talk about the primal wound, so if the primal wound, and obviously the idea of healing is only it presupposes, isn't it, that there is a wound, right? So but coming out of the fog, what else do we do? Oh yeah, we're not a blank slate. We don't arrive with our parents as a blank slate. What are the pluses and minuses for you with metaphors?
Just metaphors in general.
Metaphors in general, and this sort of these adoptee metaphors, should we call them?
I think that for adoptees, I think the pluses are that for many of us, the initial wounding took place before we had language, which means that it poses a challenge for traditional talk therapy. It poses a challenge for us to, they sort of say, name it to tame it. Well, what do you do when it happened pre-verbally? You don't have language around that. And I think that direct language is the hardest to gain access to. And so we can metaphor allows us a way into the felt result of the wound, and it allows us to start wiggling our way in the direction of what it is we actually want to get to. So I think it's an access point that is easier than trying to directly describe what's going on or the process. The the metaphors, it's not direct language, and that means that there's increased risk of misunderstanding.
Yeah. We can grasp it, right? I was talking about this with somebody else the other day. Talk about grasping. We make the abstract concrete.
Yeah, and I think that's important for us to be able to make the abstract concrete. Especially for those of us whose, well, maybe not especially, but my direct experience is as a person who internalized things and shut down. You know, I know other adoptees who, though they may have internalized some things, they tend to be more outward reaching. Their expression of the wound tends to be more anger, right? And my expression of the wound has been more anxious, depressive, right? Shutting down, that sort of thing. Now I forgot where I was going. I'm sorry.
It's all right. So people say that in the general world, it's in the general public world, it's a saying that time is the greatest healer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's true?
I'm not sure that time all by itself has the capacity to heal this size of wound. I think time offers us opportunities in terms of, especially if we were wounded as children, obviously, as time passes and we come into our own competence as adults, we just develop as naturally without necessarily doing anything. The brain is fully developed, and we develop skills and we develop competencies that facilitate being able to look at it. So in that way, time helps. Time is a form of distance, and I think in any sort of grief or wounding process, distance offers us the opportunity for a broader perspective that is helpful. So time, yes, is an element of healing.
Yeah, is it?
But I think work is also required.
I think if there's no work, then time doesn't matter a jot.
I think so. I guess what I'm saying is time provides us an opportunity. Does that make sense? In that you and I are both adult human beings, and we've had experiences that, we've had successes in our adult lives. We put roofs over our heads. We go and buy the food. We take care of ourselves. And I think for a lot of adoptees, just that is what has been for me sort of part of the healing. I'm not powerless anymore. You can't just take me from one place to the other. I'm in charge now. I pay the bills, I do all the things, and that's powerful. So I think time and growing give us an opportunity that then we can bring in the work and do it. But I don't think that, I think if I had just sat still and not written, not been self-reflective, not gone to therapy, not, the list of things that I've done, I think I would be in exactly the same place that I was, which on the outside, like I think for a lot of adoptees, I appeared to be a competent parent, employee, worker, doing good things in the world. On the inside, just there was no peace, no ease. or minimally so. And I was sort of driven by this wound, by the results of it. I was driven by it, Simon, I was driven by a desperate need to prove myself worthy. That's what was driving me. This constant need to prove myself worthy. And so the ease I talked about at the beginning, about being at ease in yourself, is a form of knowing that I'm worthy enough just sitting here breathing air. I don't have to prove it to anybody.
Another Scottish lady that's had a big impact on me talks about unconditional love, and she also has a daughter, and she talks about her unconditional love for her daughter, and the fact that that daughter could lie in bed every day for the rest of her life, and she would still love her. Right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think obviously this is not a path that everybody's going to take or that I recommend, but I definitely think that having my own children was part of my healing. Because I do, yes, I agree with this woman. I don't want my children to stay in bed, because that would not be a happy life for them. But it's not because I wouldn't love them if they did so. And so feeling that unconditional love for my children and living into that was sort of a practice run at doing it for myself. Does that make sense? So I'm like, I have this, this first wee baby, and I'm looking down at him, and of course there's all the I think adoptees who've had children will know this, especially if they look like you, that first of all, whether they look like you or not, the first look at this human being that is the only human being, or the first human being you've ever known on the planet who's actually genetically related to you, kind of, just explodes your whole head and heart. And then you have all these realizations. You're looking at this infant and thinking, and now somebody comes into the room and just takes him away? What horror is that, right? For both of you. And for me, it just opened up that whole, it was the first step I said I was, completely shut down. It was the first opening up of, all these wee things that I've felt and shut down as a kid about this not being all sunshine and roses, this experience. That's real, and then the unconditional love part. I had throughout my children's childhood moments where something would be happening, and I would just think, I would think about something, take a sidestep and just say that I didn't have the most loving, and this is an understatement, I didn't have the most loving adoptive mother on the planet. And so I would look at my children and I would have a wee flashback to something that had happened or something that had been said to me when I was a kid. And I would just think, I would never speak to my child like that. It's not loving. It's not kind. Not fruitful in any way. It's not helpful. And so all of that, and so that's sort of a manifestation of the unconditional love for my children. And my therapist through the years has loved to remind me that I do know how to lovingly take care of a human being. And the evidence is my children, and the evidence is the children that I taught in high school. And so she was sort of coaching me to turn that back in the direction of myself, which was one of the pieces that I needed to learn.
Wow.
That was winded. Sorry if that was
no,
too
that was beautiful. That was beautiful. That wasn't, no, we're giving, I'm giving you lots of space. So it's not long-winded at all. I want to take you back to that. You talked about it, an opening up moment. You know, instead of being closed down, is that, you know, yeah. So what did that, was that painful? Was that joyous? Was that all of those? What was the opening? Talk us through the opening up.
I think the opening up, and I think are you referring to when, you know, when I first looked at my first child and sort of realized?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was all of that, yes. So I have this moment where I'm looking down at him, and there's just this astounding, like, I'm actually connected to another human being on the planet. That's just absolutely marvelous, right? And then I think I had what's sort of a normal first, and I was young, first young mother response, you know, where I went, and I'd read all the baby books, all of them, development, brain development, body development. But I have this moment in the hospital. So I have the first, this is marvelous. And then I'm looking down at this child and going, oh God, this beautiful little creature is completely dependent on me. I don't know that I'm competent enough for this. What have I done? And then I think actually a nurse or somebody came into the room, and that's what made me think. And it was almost not just a mental thought, like a felt thing, like, oh, this is the moment where actually my mother didn't even get to hold me, but sort of, oh, this is where they come for him, you know? And I had to sort of talk myself up. No, darling, they don't come for him. Nobody comes for us anymore. And that led me down the path that I think was the first real opening up of the grief for me, for myself and for my mother. What would my son have felt if somebody had come and taken him, tearing up as I'm saying this, because I'm thinking literally about him, like, what if somebody had come and taken him? What would that wee baby who had just been in his mother's arms, what he would, and I knew I'm feeling that because it's me that's been taken. I know exactly what that feels like. And then, like, what would I, as the mother, feel if somebody just came and took my baby? Unimaginable grief. So that was the beginning of the opening up.
Can I take you back there? Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
So are you talking here about coming out of the fog?
I don't think I actually came out of the fog until years after that, because that grief piece was so huge. And my patterning, right, the thing that I'd been practicing, possibly from birth, was to shut down. So I had this huge feeling and realization, and it was too much. So I shut it down. I didn't think about shutting it down. The reflex came in. We don't do this. Bam.
So you opened up and immediately shut down.
Yep.
So because as the way I yeah, little theoretical Simon, right? This is Simon's theory. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't got any. Me and my wife haven't got any kids. So, but and you know, stereotypes. You know, mother child bond, father child bond, different things. Let's just put it at that. So, why I think that women have a tougher time is because they have felt this unconditional love. Mothers have felt this unconditional love, feel this unconditional love. And even if they haven't had a baby yet, if they've got a maternal instinct, they've got a really deep thing for kids. And so given that deep thing, that deep love, right? Their question would be, how could anything overcome? I want to use the Trump word, right? How could anything trump that? What could have trumped that?
You mean in terms of healing from it, or?
No, not in terms of healing from it. So I don't know what I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay.
It's just a theory, right? So let me put it a different way. Let me put it in my way, right? So I thought, well, you know, what would I have done if I'd been my biological dad, right?
Yeah.
What would I have done, right? And how that guy wasn't bonded to me, you know, he hadn't carried me for 9 months. It's a different thing.
Yep.
It's a different thing. So what I'm thinking is, if you're a woman and you've got this incredible bond with your child, then the question is, what on earth is powerful enough, could be powerful enough to break this bond? How on earth could she do it to me?
I thought that sentence, that question, without the "to me" at the end. How on earth did she do it? And what perhaps the circumstance of my first child's birth helped me in that I was 20, same age as my mother, and he was an unintended pregnancy, and I wasn't married. So I went through the same journey that she went through, basically. Had a boyfriend, he was the dad, blah, blah. Should we get married? Blah, right? All of that, except I was doing this in 1987, right? This, you know, and she'd been doing it in 1967. Very different.
Very different.
Very different. And I was aware of that. And I was aware of, I will say that I did not consider adoption, because selfishly, I didn't consider adoption because well, selfishly and not selfishly, but on the selfish end, I could not cope with, I knew I wouldn't be able to cope with having a mother somewhere in the world that I didn't know and a child somewhere in the world that I didn't know. Just couldn't do it. And I didn't want him, well, I didn't know he was a him when I was having this thought, but I didn't want the baby to have to go through what I'd gone through. So all of the rational things, you know, and my adoptive dad was just beside himself because he's thinking, as a parent, completely logically, right? You're 20, you haven't finished uni, you need to have a termination or give this baby up for adoption because this is just going to make your life too hard and his life is going to be hard. All the logical things, right? And I just, when I told him that I'd fallen pregnant, I didn't say that. I said, Dad, I'm having a baby. And he looked at me. He born in Ireland and brought up in England before he moved back to Scotland. So he's got this English accent and he says, should I make us a cup of tea? Yes, Dad, think you should make us a cup of tea. So he comes back in and he's going through, right, we can take care of this. I mean, good dad, right? And I let him go through it all. And then I took a deep breath and I said, Dad, I didn't say I'm pregnant. What I said was, I'm having a baby. That's what I'm doing. And of course, he wasn't a fan of that, which who would be? But so I'd gone through this whole bit, right? Where you have to go home and you have to say to the parents, this has happened, and the parents do whatever the parents do, whatever they did in a small Scottish town in 1967, which, you know, is not the same response that I was going to get 20 years later. And so I think that that was what enabled me to remove the to me at the end of your sentence. Not how could she do this to me, but just I see that your range of choices was far more limited than mine. And that if she had chosen the same thing that I chose, both our paths would have been more limited than mine and my son's 20 years later. And she was aware of that. And then I was also aware, and I think you and I talked in the last podcast, I think we talked about beliefs and how sometimes our beliefs don't even feel like beliefs, they just feel like facts. And the wisdom of the day was that adoption was the right thing to do. And there are all these people around her telling her in no uncertain terms that she would be a bad mother if she kept me, that she would cause me harm. And I was aware of all that. So my feeling there in that hospital room was not, how could you do it to me? It was just, it was grief for both of us. How did we survive this? This is absolutely awful. How did you survive? And I just thought, wherever you are, I hope you've gone on and had whatever life you want. I hope you've recovered from this, and I don't understand how you would have. And so all of that was huge. And so fairly quickly, I just shut that down, just put a lid right back on that because I couldn't deal with it.
Yeah. The to me thing is very significant. I think one little little thing that meant a lot reading my adoption file is that the adoption was planned before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And so it before she'd seen me. So it was a plan. a plan for something still within her, rather than a rejection of something that came. That was pretty big for me.
Yeah, I think those things are big. I had similar when I got the notes that this had been the plan. She'd been sent to a mothering home, and mothering home, they were not nice places. And so before I was a reality, you know, there was that. And then her mother came to the hospital. So she never got to hold me, but her mother came to the hospital, and somehow she managed to get a wee look. And she went to my mother and said, well, she's lovely, let's just take her home. And it sent my mother into this sort of spiral of, you know, wait a minute, I've had sort of tunnel vision that this is the path I'm now walking down. I thought I was going to get married and we were going to have this baby, and I've done this horrible shift. And she went home. I went to foster care. She's coming in to, you know, see the person, social worker, whatever you want to call her. And she's clearly, it's thrown her into this huge indecision. And then this woman says to her on one of their sessions, I want you to go home and I want you to just say, I've decided on adoption. And that's what she did. And when I read that in the notes, Simon, I was so angry at that woman. Well, you can maybe imagine. I don't think people who are not adopted can imagine my anger. And if we're pinpointing a moment that I came out of the fog, I think it's that. I think that was the final. I think I'd been on the way of opening up and shutting down, opening up, shutting down. This was about 14 years, maybe after 13 years after I had my son. And I think that was the final, right, it's just open now. We're out. Yeah, the notes and that particular note, just go home and say I've decided on adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that seems like a good place to bring it in. Otherwise, we'll be into it for another hour.
It's true.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Thanks, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.